Well, first, thanks for everybody for attending. Really appreciate you spending the time with us. I think, as I was just saying, we've got a really good discussion here. You know, it's all about how we can deliver using background AI workers, and I'll define what that is, some real breakthroughs. And we're going to spend some time on some use cases. One is in the mortgage insurance area, and the other is in retail origination. And you'll get a feel for the kind of ROI that come from delivering it as a background AI worker. If you don't know True, give me 2 minutes on who True is. We've been in business for about 10 years, deploying AI to help transform a number of lenders in the mortgage industry. Frankly, the mortgage insurance industry is one of the big areas of transformation we did. 4 of the 6 mortgage insurance players use True. So chances are, if you're a lender out here, we've probably processed your loans on the True platform already.
Yep.
And then in retail origination, fairly independent mortgages, top 5 lenders uses our background AI workers to really streamline and build a much more efficient loan manufacturing process. So we've got some good use cases to share, and hopefully that'll provide us some good insights. My name is Steve Butler. I'm CEO for True, and my background is the last 10 years I've been building companies to put AI into the mortgage industry. First company was AI Foundry, which was sold to Guaranteed Rate, and that helped form the gateless business for them. And then now I'm at True, and I think we're doing bigger and better things here. But my whole background really is business process transformation, 30 plus years as an exec. But Matt here has got a deep background in mortgage, over 30 years, first as an underwriter, then a product owner, product manager, eventually running development projects at Enact MI. In fact, he deployed True at Enact and helped transform what used to be a multi-hour process to write insurance to one that's under 15 minutes today. Again, deploying True as a background worker. So with the 2 of us, we hopefully can give you some insights and some best practices into this whole space. Yep. Now, the topic we chose really came from a Housing Wire survey that they ran over the last 3 months or so. So it's very current. And we were pleased to see that about 100 lenders came back, and almost 2/3 of those are using AI. So I think that's good, and that's a good step, and I think it's going to keep going up from there. In terms of how they're using it, if you look at this, you're seeing a good mix of clearly, let's make it more efficient, let's take cost out, right? Let's streamline the process and so forth. But there's also some pretty good numbers for the top line. Let's find more customers, right? Let's build awareness, right? Let's make a better customer experience, better borrower experience. So I think there's a good mix of front office and back office investments going on in AI. What's really interesting is looking at the ones that have said no. And the ones that have said no, they say no because they're confused about what AI can actually do for them. They're also skeptical about the ROI. And by the way, on that topic, that skepticism is real, and it goes back before AI. It's the last 20 years. When I talk to executives, they tell me that, we spent all this money, it's hundreds of dollars per loan, the tech stack, and our costs keep going up every year. Yeah. So it's not just AI, it's sort of led to this through software investments that have been made before. And so we want to address that, and the other one is integration. There's so much fragmentation. And lenders are buying tools from so many different players, and they have to make it all work together. So they're concerned about that. And so that keeps them on the sidelines. Another area is data quality. And this is another way of saying, by the way, garbage in, garbage out. If I go invest in AI today, and I don't have good data quality, then what's the point? So we looked at this result, and we said, we can address some of these things. And so that's really what we're going to try to do in this workshop.
Yep.
Now, we're going to spend a ton of time on data, because we really believe data quality is a secret to really making things a whole lot better. So I want to start off and ask Matt a question about what do he mean when I say mortgage data. Excuse me. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So when you think about the data that makes up the loan, what does it mean when we're looking at it and evaluating it? It's core to making your risk decision. It's core to understanding the creditworthiness of the borrower. It's core to understanding your risk exposure as a lender. All those things are absolute necessary, but how does it get there? How does that data arrive? There's multiple levels of it, right? You start off with the borrower data. What did they put on the application? It talks about their income, their source of it, how much is coming in, what's their assets look like, right? What's their liabilities? What do they need this loan to do? What kind of property are they looking for? So all that really kind of makes it up. But the bottom line on this is, as this information flows in, it's flowing in from all sorts of third parties, from the borrowers. Documents are coming in. Somebody at the lender shop has got to evaluate it each time an update's made, right? You have to make sure that you end up with an absolute rock-solid data that's in the loan record that's supported by all the documentation and all the inputs that come in. So that's really what it means. It's core to making a transaction.
Yeah. But I use the term, it's sort of the lifeblood of the whole process. If you don't have good data, you don't really have good anything.
Right.
Another analogy is if you're working on underwriting, you're on the third or fourth floor, and data is the foundation. So if you're a shaky foundation, you're going to have shaky underwriting.
Yep.
Right. And so,
absolutely.
So that's the way it works. And so now the good news is this industry actually gets good data eventually.
Yep.
You know, you wouldn't have an industry if you couldn't actually get to the quality you need to underwrite and sell off a loan and service a loan and insure a loan, et cetera. So you actually get there, and you get to the point where you have data that you can actually trust. So, you know, I want to lay out a definition for everybody, which is what we mean by trusted data. And trusted data is an event that you all get to eventually, and you do a real good job of it. You know, this industry does a good job of it, and I know it keeps trying to get better and better and making sure that there's fewer and fewer defects in loans. But this is something that is a real important gate in any process. Now, Matt, I guess the industry does it well. Is the status quo kind of where it's at? How is it doing it today and getting to that point?
Yeah, so how do you get to trusted data today? So where does it start? The loan officers and the LOAs, they spend a tremendous amount of time working with prospects to turn them into borrowers. What's the first thing that happens when you turn into a borrower? I get a task list, right? Well, I got to send you those documents, right? Those documents start rolling in. So that means that there's a manual collection point. These documents roll in, they roll in iterative levels, and somebody's got to stop, take a look at it, do a review, and update the loan record if necessary. It's a continuous process. It comes in. It's very interruptive. And then you have other inputs of this data that's coming in. You know, you have the third party, the income, the assets, the employment validation. Those are all coming in. Again, at each stage of the process, somebody's got to stop, do a review, and make sure that you have a good quality loan as to push the transaction through the manufacturing cycle. At the end of the day, the quality of this and the accuracy of this is vital because it is used at every decision point throughout the process, right? Pre-underwriting, post-underwriting, post-closing. All of this, if you have a defect at any one of these stages, it can impact the borrower's experience or it can impact the lender's execution experience with defect.
You want to ask me a question? I know you do.
I know. So Steve, so Steve, I think for the next slide that we're going to talk through, you talk to executives,
right,
all the time, right, at this lender shop, the C-suite occupants. What do they think about their manufacturing quality? What do they think about their process?
Yeah, no, I do talk to C-suite executives and everybody all the time. And the reality is the status quo is not cutting it. You know, it takes way too long to get. I mean, what you just described is a very manual process. And what they really want to get to is this. They need to overcome the decisioning barrier. It is way too long. I mean, it takes 24 to 48 hours, and I've seen it much longer than this. When you submit all the documents necessary to get a pre-approval, it takes that long to get a pre-approval. And the industry needs to move to sub 1 hour. If you really want to win borrowers, right, and delight borrowers, their documents come in within an hour, they're getting a pre-approval, or within seconds and minutes, they're getting information about the documents they supplied. Right, that's where this has to go, and it's only going to go if we can really attack this long time to get to trusted data, right, and take the manual work out and all these extra workflows that are just for steering and comparing and so forth. You can get to the point, technology stacks today are available, and True has one, where you can get to near real time on your trusted data. And real magic happens when you can get to near real time. So this is where we want to go, and the only way we're going to get there is with introducing AI. So I'm going to do that right now.
Yep.
Spend some time on this concept of background workers. So with AI, for me, it's always about matching the intelligence of the AI with the task we're giving it. ChatGPT is a great example. It's used for horizontally, and so it gets you partially there, right? You get partially there, and then we all have to do a lot of work to kind of get it the rest of the way. It's a great assist, but I just said earlier that this industry has plenty of decades of getting assists, and I remember this conversation I had with a lender CEO who said, Steve, I actually have a bigger team than I had before having bought this software than I had. And I said, why is it? Because they had to specialize on the software that you sold me, right? I have a team now that just does this, and that's all they do. And I have to have them, and they become critical. So not only my costs going up, but I have a bigger team. And so the productivity didn't net out for me.
Yep.
We don't want to do that with AI. I really worry that we're going to end up with these partial solutions where we have specialists that do AI training, and so on and so forth. No, AI has to be delivered as a solution that handles the full task. Now, it's very challenging for mortgage because mortgage is, for me, it's probably the most complex business process I've seen, in my 30 years. I mean, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. It's really complex. And so, can AI actually cut it in this industry?
Right.
And Matt, I guess maybe you could spend a few minutes on just the complexities we're dealing with.
Yeah, so think about the mortgage transaction. From a typical borrower's perspective, this is probably the most complex financial transaction that they enter into. And they enter into it multiple times during their life. It's daunting, right? So the complexity is really driven by a bunch of things. The inputs, all of the massive amounts of personal data and transactional data that has to be collected, aggregated, and validated, right? So that really drives the front end of the process. How hard is it just to do the loan setup? How difficult is it to get that loan to the next stage of the process? There's also regulatory. So you have TRID, you have HMDA, you have Dodd-Frank provisions, you have CFPB, you have local and state regs. This all drives the complexity and what the lender has to deal with on a daily basis as they're getting this loan put through the process. At the end, again, just going back to that theme, somebody's got to aggregate, validate, and make sure that you have a rock solid record as it goes through each stage of this process. It can really impact what the borrower thinks about the lenders. It impacts their experience. If there's too much time frame that goes along during the manufacturing process, the borrower's like, gosh, this is taking a long time. This is too much. If you have to go back to the borrower multiple times to do updates, to gather additional information that wasn't gathered the first time, it was missed, that's also a negative. Because what do the borrowers want? The borrowers want a seamless, fast digital experience. That's what they're accustomed to in today's transactions, right? It is also vital, again, as you get to past the closing table and you get into execution, into secondary, any defects that are exposed at that point are tremendously costly to the lender shop.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, when I listen to that, sometimes I think it's a bridge too far to sort of apply AI generally to mortgage.
Generally,
it just feels at times, in fact, I've had those thoughts over the last 10 years that, okay, this is just too hard.
Yeah.
It's just too hard. But if you take a page from, product manufacturing, physical product manufacturing, let's just take a page from that. How is that done today? It's certainly done in stages, right? And it's all downhill. It goes in one direction. It's not like mortgage manufacturing, which I have seen happen where, you get 2 or 3 stages down path and you find out that you're missing some data or it's inconsistent,
Yep.
right? So you go back to stage 1 and you start spawning all these new workflows for quality control, for steering and comparing, getting the data right. And so you end up with this really very expensive back and forth process just to get your trusted data right. And if you look at, the way that a product manufacturing is set up, the stages are set to be really automated. That's how they chose their stages. And can we automate this entire stage? And And again, in mortgage manufacturing, the stages are organized more by the expertise we have or the people availability we have. And so they're not very automatable in the current stages.
Yep.
So the idea here is to find a way to break up your process so that you can find stages that can be fully automated by an AI worker. And so I want to introduce, that concept of a background AI worker where it handles the stage fully, right? There's no need to correct the results, review the results, heaven forbid, send it to India and have them correct it, which is a lot what happens by all other vendors. That's where it goes. And so, that's not what we want to do in this industry. We really want the background worker to handle that stage fully. And the next stage after that, by the way, and if you've got your data quality, you're going forward only. One of the things about a background AI worker, that as we define it, it's doing all the data indexing, extraction, and cross-validation across the entire loan file. So there isn't any data quality issues. So you're moving forward at that point the rest of the way. And if you can do that, then the next stage might be handled by a background AI, it might be handled by a human. It depends again on whether you can match the intelligence of AI to that task. But the point is you're moving in one direction and you've got the full lift of that stage by the AI worker that's doing the work. Now, we've got real good use cases of this actually in practice with large companies, and I'm going to turn to Matt to help us with that and cover some of the use cases that you know about.
Yeah, so let's talk about the one that I'm absolutely most familiar with. Spent a lot of my career doing this. This is the mortgage insurance use case. So two basic processes that happen in mortgage insurance: the delegated process and the non-delegated process. I want to talk about the non-delegated process because it is a form of underwriting. A mortgage insurance company, if you do a non-delegated transaction, the lender's required to submit basically what I would call a slim underwriting package, right? The mortgage insurance company is not doing a full underwrite. They're doing an actual risk review. So in pre-days, before we instituted True, this would be a process where you had multiple workers behind the scenes that would do the loan setup, do the data entry, get something ready so that an underwriter could start the review process. Turnaround time, even in best case scenario, it would be an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that's assuming they weren't overloaded with volume. There were times back when volume was really, really high, it could take 2-3 days to get a mortgage insurance commitment back on a non-delegated. So once we instituted True at the company and put the background worker into the process, here's what was really happening, and I'm sure people have experienced this today, especially if they remember back into the previous time. The slim package is submitted, and within a few minutes, the background worker takes it, indexes everything, so it understands what document stack is there. It takes off the important, vital data elements, puts that into the loan record. All this data, all this information is fed into a proprietary risk engine at the MI company. And then within 15 minutes, a result is sent back. The result can be, hey, here's your commitment of insurance. Everything was there, fit the risk profile. Boom, you get your insurance back, non-delegated within 15, 20 minutes. Else, you get back a stip sheet. Says, hey, we got your package. We're still missing your appraisal. That's just as an example. But that all happens before the first human at the company reviews a document. It doesn't go to the underwriter until the next stage. In other words, somebody sends in something else, or their risk engine says, no, this has got to go for further review. It's exception-based handling at that point. It's dynamically changed the game. Another use case, which is great, is the loan setup. So again, taking that prospect, turning it into a borrower, they're now submitting all their documentation in. So instead of it arriving and getting into a holding tank and then somebody's got to go out there, stop what they're doing and say, yep, this is what we got for the Smith loan, get it organized, get it put into the right spot, all the documents in the right spot, update all the data. You really want the background worker to take that in, find it, pull that out, index everything, put it in the right spot, take off the critical pieces of data, and then inform the lender. Hey, you just got this stack. Here's everything that you just got. Here's where it's all put. Here's the data that we received and it was updated. And oh, by the way, I need you to go look at these couple of things because it's important. Again, exception-based handling dramatically reduces the time frame between what the borrower has just submitted to you and the next step of the decisioning process, near real time.
Yeah, and what I like about those two cases is these are large companies doing thousands of loans a month in production, right?
Yep.
Some cases, public companies with a high bar for quality. And they call attention to that last column. I mean, they were talking about, 96, 92% auto pass, meaning that no human had to look at it. The AI was right, you trust it, it went into your downstream systems, the next stage in the process. Right, so this is really, so when you get that kind of results, you're getting a big ROI. Remember there was a question on that housing survey early about is there an ROI, and I want to show you the ROI that one of our customers has measured here. This is First Continental Mortgage, which is a lender to the building industry, a good-sized lender, and their ROI is, if you do the math, about 12x. You're getting a 12x higher throughput by using background AI workers in their process.
Yep.
So there's a real ROI, and I just want to emphasize, it comes from the fact that you deploy it correctly as a background worker. You don't get this if you get partial, right? The AI takes you 70, 80%, and you have to do the rest. You get this because you've got 100%. So you have to pick and choose how you break it down. And you'll see later the segments that we've broken it down to in terms of being able to deliver background services. Now, there's more you can do, though, and we've talked about trusted data and the need to do that fast and attack that first. We talked about background workers. There's another area, and this one actually is very frustrating for me in terms of the way this industry handles things. This is a real batch-oriented industry. What I mean by batch is, why do we wait for all the data and the documents to settle into the LOS before we make it actionable? This could be hours and days after they were submitted by the borrower or third-party agencies, wherever the data comes from, and we're still letting the data settle there, right? That's what batch is. That's a very 1960s kind of computer processing approach. Yeah. The rest of the world has moved to what's called continuous operation. As data flows in, you make it actionable right away, and you use that actionable data to make decisioning right away. Right, and that means you put decisioning much closer to the borrower, right? In the hands of the LO, the tech stack they have now gives them some decisioning. And that slide I showed you earlier, which is can we do a loan approval under an hour? That's one of the ways you get there. So continuous operation is a really important another step that we put in. Now Matt does this all the time with our customers. What he spends his time doing is, and his team is, getting background AI workers and getting them set up in a continuous operation. And our MOS platform here, and I'm going to start you over the screenshot, is a continuously operating platform putting background workers in place. And so, Matt, I'm going to have you talk to this, if you wouldn't mind, and what this really means.
Yeah, so think about the process that may be going on today. Information comes in, it's updates. Somebody stops, they do a review, and say, guys, I got an updated pay stub. Now I got to update the income worksheet. Get all that done, and then it goes off to the next stage. What's happening here, you can kind of see it on the screen. Documents come in, could be a pay stub, could be a bank statement, whatever it is. It's processed near instantaneously. The update is made, and then the update is made as information. So a lender is then informed that this work was done. The task is complete. And the only thing that the lender is doing at this point is reviewing any exceptions. So an exception could be, hey, by the way, we just got this new pay stub. It is up to date. It doesn't support the income that was originally attested to. You want to know that as soon as possible because you have an issue, you have a problem. You also want to know, is my documentation out of date? I'm expecting something to be received, like an updated bank statement. I'm expecting to get this and update that. So then you now know, it's like, okay, now I've got my update. I can move this thing to the next stage. Maybe it's ready for underwriting at that point. It happens continuously. It happens in real time. Again, information pushed to the lender versus the lender accumulating, aggregating, and reviewing. It's a difference.
Yeah. One of the questions that came from the housing survey was, if I wanted, where do I want to take my AI next? What do I want to use AI and leverage that in the process? And these are the top 5, and they're really interesting. I mean, enhancing the borrower experience, et cetera, et cetera. And so let me try to address what Matt just described and how we could handle each one of these and improve each one of these areas for you with background AI workers and with continuous processing. I mean, first of all, enhancing the borrower experience. Could you make it any better if they submit documents and the LO is on the call with them and basically gives them real-time information about those documents? I mean, that's the kind of interaction that borrowers want, right, when you can do that. And that's doable today, right? So the kind of what borrowers want is feedback, instant feedback, so that this issue can go away, right, and for them. And so that's how you enhance it with those personalized interactions. In terms of underwriting risk assessment, I mean, data quality, getting that done early and continuously working on data quality. As new documents come in, if a new document came in, we're going to right away look at the address, the borrower's name, any information on there, and make sure it's consistent with all the other documents and all the other data in the LOS. We call it a 360 view, and it cross-validates across all of that. So the quality is maintained continuously, right? You don't drop in quality because docs came in. No, you get more and more quality as docs come in. It's constantly improving. Touchless document indexing, and that is basically a background worker, right? That's it. You deploy that, you've got touchless data indexing and extraction. Accelerating loan processing, reducing cycle times. Again, background workers are going to accelerate that whole process because you're going to basically collapse the time to do trusted data. And then the last one, Matt just showed that, right? Instant income analysis. Pay stubs, W-2s, bank statements, you'll get an instant income asset analysis, in a dashboard that the LO can actually use, which is what Matt was showing you. So we address all of those directly, and in fact, that's kind of how we package our MOS solution. If you were to do business with True, you would have the opportunity to deploy any one of these touchless data or touchless decisioning solutions, right? Each one of these been organized. Again, we found a way to break the process into automatable segments that an AI worker can handle, right? And so we would deploy those in that fashion. We would obviously start you off, because we believe so strongly in it, to get your instant indexing and your instant extraction done first. That's your data quality, and then move into the decisioning. But if you walk your way through that, you're going to end up with that 48 hours brought down to under an hour kind of solution. And that's where we want to bring you in this process.
No, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, Matt, I'm going to ask, we've covered a lot of stuff here. Maybe we can kind of ask you to sort of think about this as now a set of best practices that you can kind of share with everybody.
Yeah, so when you think about what can you do, take a look at your operation. Review the things that you can do to automate the process of obtaining the trusted data set. Where can you employ those background workers to do these tasks? Again, 100% completion of these tasks. And then, finally, just really have an understanding of how this can collapse the process for you by leveraging the AI worker and all the trusted data that you have at that point.
Yeah. We have time for questions. If you've got some, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a question. So when you were looking at those, like these are the 3 things over here, 2 things over here we can do. Is it like, would you like overlay this on top of like your OCR that you're already using or something like that? Or does it take the place of a tech stack that you already have? At what point do you do that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So what this first step of the process, again, classification, what we call indexing, and extraction. That's really a combination of a bunch of different technologies. OCR is a part of it, right? So there's no need to have another OCR. This is going to do the full OCR on everything that comes in, breaks those individual pages, because when you get a stack of PDFs, it could be 100 pages of it, or it could be 2 pages. What has to happen, though, is that whatever's been submitted there, somebody's got to understand, and this is the background worker's job, what documents are there. That's the first step. That's what we believe so much in this. You start off with understanding what the documents are, and then you understand off of that document, what's the important data. So a pay stub, it's very important to have all those pieces so that you can do a proper analysis. But it's also important to understand what's the dates on that, because that drives how old that document is, right? Whether it has to be updated. Yeah. Same with bank statements. It's not only just the transactions, but you have to understand who's the owners. Right? How many different accounts are on that particular bank statement, right? All that has to be broken apart and has to be exposed. So you let the background worker do all that. That's really what we're talking about. The cross-validation, that piece is because we have all this data, we've already processed the documents, we've already processed the extraction, then it goes back and it looks across your LOS data and say, you have inconsistencies. Again, exception-based handling, not making somebody stop and do a full file review, or those multiple checkers checking the checkers, right? Those multiple levels. It's really informing you, hey, you've got an inconsistency. This needs to be reviewed. The AI is not going to make the decision about what you have to do with that inconsistency. What it wants to do is tell you, you have an inconsistency, let the experts go out and take care of what that inconsistency is. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah. In the back?
So I believe you called it the MLS platform, the case that we're going to. Is that integrated in with your POS, like a Simple Nexus, Blend, or
Yeah.
does that replace that?
No, it actually is integrated. So the platform is agnostic to how the documents come in. It really is. So there's a wide choice with how point of sale systems or how borrowers want to submit documents. There's even borrowers that walk into a place and they get their documents scanned in. It's really agnostic to it. But what happens with all these processes is the documents come in, they go into a holding tank. That's really what happens. It gets aggregated and says, somebody's got to do a review. Let the background worker do it. It's just going to pick them up from wherever that collection point is, do all the work, and then again, inform the lender, hey, the work's done, take a look at these couple of things.
You guys have like a case study of like examples where like we look at trying to think through the ROI, integration, you've got all these different factors and there's such a lift that has to happen. Like to break it into just practical terms, do you have anything like that that's like a takeaway for those of us that we can kind of think through that process?
Yeah, we've got some case studies we can, at the end of the thing, let's meet up and we'll get some contact information. Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want to expand on what Matt said too. The background worker's already been trained to handle the particular task. So in the case of indexing, it supports 1,000 different document classes.
Yep.
That origination lender, they need about 500 documents to be supported for all their products across all states. So it's indexing 500 unique documents. Now, each document has thousands of variants. You think about a bank statement, right, supports all of those as well. So that's the training you get out of the box. Any new lender gets all of that. They don't have to go back through that training. It comes as part of the solution.
Yep. Yes.
I recently got a mortgage, and the most painful part was me getting my documents to.
Yep.
Have you all thought about anything on the consumer side to kind of help with this?
It's interesting. It was the painful part of the process, what the lender put you through to actually submit the documents?
I would say finding them, like myself, like
Organized, yeah, right.
like in my house, and but then like the lender's process wasn't that bad.
Okay, all right.
But I was wondering if there was like a borrower-facing like iteration of this idea, make it easier to deliver your documents to.
Right. And one of the ways, and so I don't think that we've got a bot that can get to your house and search through your drawers. Probably just a bridge too far for that, right? You don't really want that. But there's been some research, and I think I put it that way. It's not there yet. There's been some research with how do you make the experience with the borrower? If the borrower is interacting with a point of sale system, how do you make that interactive in the moment and not iterative? Because right now, basically, just in layman's terms, the borrower gets a task list, they fulfill it, and then at some point down the line, they may be told, I got everything, or no, I didn't get everything. What you really want is you want a background worker to be interacting with that borrower in that moment to say, I think you gave me 2 pay stubs. I think I got both of these. This looks like a bank statement. This page, I can't read. And it's probably because you took a picture off your computer screen of your last pay stub and then submitted that JPEG. That's truly what we see that comes across. You want to tell the borrower that up front. You don't want to tell them 2 days later.
No, yeah, I think that's the right way of thinking about
Yeah.
it. Is it needs to be interactive as you're uploading
Yeah.
Yeah.
the documents,
Yep.
so that like you can close that gap.
Close the gap. Yep.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of cases, like the original lender was at a disadvantage. Like they help you get
Yes.
all your documents together, and you have the packet,
Yep.
and then you can go shoot it off with 3 other lenders to shop for you.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Yep.
I've got a follow-up on the
Yeah.
ROI question, and if anyone wants the ROI work, I encourage them to hit the QR code. But there was an example, I think it was a gentleman named Mike, in one of the examples that was saying, I'm doing processing 4 loans in 20 minutes now. So as you get to calculating ROI, how are lenders taking into account staffing model changes as the business becomes more efficient? And 4 loans in 20 minutes is a pretty high efficiency bar.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no question that, a lot of lenders are at sort of skeleton staff today, right? So certainly with a solution like this, they can scale up without adding, and that's a big win for them, right? And so what I see happening is the burden is coming off the LO for dealing with documents, LO and LOA, and we see this happen with our lenders where they're spending more time with borrowers where they want to spend their time anyway. And so, so you're seeing help with providing that white glove treatment, which they want to do, right? And the team itself, the remaining team, can just handle that much more loans using the background AI workers.
Yeah.
So whether they're trimming staff and all that, I think they're at skeleton at this point. So we haven't seen a lot of that happening yet. And I see them kind of focusing on the harder stuff. Again, AI is not going to handle everything. There's going to be certain types of classes of loans that are going to require hand-holding, right? So I think that's kind of how it's being worked out.
Yeah.
So instead of like coming into it and saying, okay, we can reduce headcount because of this, instead you'll be able to achieve the proverbial scale without adding headcount as the market.
Right.
finds
During the next cycle.
Scale up and
Right.
scale down significantly without, exactly
Yeah.
right, yeah.
And I think what we've heard feedback from our current clients is that they're redeploying these resources. They may be a skeleton crew, and this may be a lift to them, but they're redeploying those so that they can have sharper execution, better borrower experience, all the things that are important. Managing documents and the data off those documents, that's vital, but it's kind of mindless task. You don't want your experts to be doing that.
Yeah.
You want your experts to be dealing with your borrowers.
Yeah.
That's really where you want your efforts to be.
There's a whole ROI around pull-through rate as well that comes from this. You're working closer with the applicants and so forth. So, yeah, all of that is in the mix.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very good.
Other questions?
About the intensity and amount of time in terms of the client onboarding process?
Yeah, so it varies by organization, and it's primarily a change management. And my first conversation with the clients as they're going through this process and they get started on it, it is about, hey, let's gear up for the change management. The worker is going to do what it does. The background worker, it's going to do what it does, right? What has to change is the organization, because people get fearful, right? It's a natural reaction, and I don't know, I'm going to date myself. I don't know how many of us were in the business in 1995 when Desktop Underwriter went into full production. And what did I hear? Oh my God, they're going to get rid of all of us underwriters. I've looked around, I haven't seen anybody getting rid of underwriters. All it did was it automated a process, it standardized an underwriting process. It just added more tasks. That's not what we're talking about. We're truly talking about put the background worker in to do the things that it's set to do, right? It matches the intelligence to the task, and then let the people do the real work, which is working with the borrowers. So it's that change management process, because if you've been stuck in the business for decades and you're used to, I'm just dealing with documents every day, I'm doing loan setup, this is what I do. It's like, you provide so much more value to your organization than that. That's where I start the conversation.
Yeah. We usually get a lender into the first service, which is our indexing background worker, in 30 to 60 days.
Yeah.
There's a mapping, especially if it's an Encompass, we've got a really strong Encompass integration. And so if the integrations to different systems are limited to the ones that we support, then within 30 to 60 days, we have you in indexing and then right away in extraction after that. At that point, you've got your trusted data.
Yep.
And that's very typical for us at this point.
Yep. Question in the back.
Would you say it's more designed or more back-end to speed things up, or more front end on the sales side? Like, is there a blend? Like, is it 80/20?
It's a true blend, and we've got clients that started in both sides. We have clients that started on the front side, automating the loan setup process, and then we have clients that started on the back side, which are saying, I want to automate my post-closing. And I think those organizations made that choice because of the early conversations we had. hey, you need to start with a part of your organization that is, you can manage the change. And so I think both of these were successes, but both of them were chosen because those organizations said, I'm going to start here because I can manage this change within the organization.
Well, here, implementation, you can do at small increments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're big believers in getting quick wins.
Yep.
There's so many AI projects that boil the ocean and they kind of never see the light of day. So I think it's all about getting quick wins, getting a lift, and moving to the next one.
Yep.
That's how you take a real journey here. Any more questions?
All right.
All right, please give Steve and Matt a round of applause. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.